Welcome back to another episode of Light Beer, Dark Money. I'm Sean Noble.
And I'm Chris Clements.
Good
Good
Chris.
day.
Good day. And we
How
have
are you?
with us today a very special guest, Tanya Contreras Wheeles, running for Congress. In,
Yeah.
what's the district number now?
Four.
4.
District
District
4.
4.
Yeah.
So they've done redistricting. So it's
Yep.
used to be what you were going to
9.
run in 9, and now
Right.
it's become 4. It's a little different. The makeup of the district is different than what you had started with.
Yeah, in a good way.
Yes, it's more. Still Democrat leaning, but
Yeah.
not as much Democrat.
Yeah.
As a result of the redistricting effort.
And we don't have a graphic of that, but why don't you describe to us like a little bit why it's so much different?
Sure,
From
yes.
where it was.
Yeah, so I think if you looked at the old CD9, it was considered like a D+9, so 9-point advantage. If you looked over the last 10 years, it was very difficult for any Republican to win in that district, from like your council level on up. And it had parts of north central Phoenix, Arcadia, down into Tempe, Ahwatukee, and then like West Mason, Chandler. So that was the old district. The new district is really squarely an East Valley district. So it's now Tempe, Ahwatukee, still a little bit of Chandler, and then almost all of Mesa. So we go a lot farther east. So from an electoral standpoint, that was very helpful. We've now, the Cook report has it at a D+2. So that's a 7-point advantage right off the top. We've also started digging in to look at races, and this is a district, unlike the old one, where Republicans do win. And, folks like Doug Ducey and Kimberly Yee, but also we've had, Corporation Commission candidates win. And so as we looked at that, we were very encouraged. And then, of course, you've got a year like this that is going to be a wave year for Republicans. And I mean, we've had meetings. I've been back to talk to the NRCC, and they're talking about, we're going to win anything D10 or better. So sitting at a D2,
That's amazing.
Yeah. So it's a great place to be, and we're excited about it, and the district's excited to have, especially those folks who are sort of like legacy 9 that are in the district. They are so fired up to have a shot at having Republican representation. And so that's been really encouraging as I'm out talking.
I got to believe the Republicans in Tempe and East Chandler, West Chandler, and Ahwatukee are probably pretty excited.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah.
And you go as far east in Mesa, you pick up Leisure World, right?
I do.
That's
Yeah.
where my mom lives.
Does she
I did not
really?
know that.
So I'll have to.
Let her-
She will be a supporter.
Let her know. It's a great community out there and very, active. That's the
Yes.
other thing. We've got our traditional constituencies that are always going to be, active. But what I'm seeing is, given the direction of the country, given the dissatisfaction with Biden and the Democrats in Congress, people who haven't normally been fired up are getting energized. And so that's been fun as well, to talk to people who, aren't necessarily ideologues. They're not reading all the blogs and doing the geeky things that we all do, but they're paying attention. And I think that's going to be a great opportunity for us and for me in this race.
Well, and I think it gives Republicans, especially someone like you, a real opportunity to talk about, what is the difference. And it just so happens that our esteemed junior senator, Mark Kelly.
Where is Mark
Where is
Kelly?
Mark Kelly?
Do we know where he is?
We might have a graphic on that. Oh, there it is.
Oh, there he is.
So, have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? He did pop up yesterday.
He did.
Because he made a statement that said that he was going to do what he told the Arizona voters that he was going to do. He was going to stand up for principle. He was going to work across the aisle with Republicans, and he wasn't going to take the party line. And then he announced that he was going to
Take
support,
the party line.
Yeah, take the party line and support the carve out of the filibuster. Kill the filibuster. I think that has implications not just in his race, which it clearly does.
Absolutely.
It's going to be bad for him.
Yep.
It's going to hurt Democrats down the ticket, and Greg Stanton in particular, because Greg Stanton has voted for all the
Where
garbage.
is Greg Stanton?
Where's
do we know
Greg
where?
Stanton? That's
Do
a
we
great
know where he
question.
is? Either?
Not in the district.
No.
But Stanton has voted for all the things that have been sent over to the Senate.
Yeah.
And now those things get more of a spotlight because Kelly has then elevated those issues. So it's not, Greg thought that, well, I could vote for this, it goes, dies in Senate, I don't have to be held responsible. Now you have an opportunity to hold him
Sure.
responsible for
Sure. Although
those policies.
I would say, though, on those policies, there's certainly, again, we've all been around this for a while. There's that whole, I can vote on it and it's going to die and I won't have to be held accountable. But I think, I think Stanton is actually a true believer in the things he's been voting for. And I think if he had his druthers, they would absolutely pass and, roll into that, the, H.R. 1, the federal takeover of elections, talk about the PRO Act and, taking away Arizona's right to work status. And then, of course, the $1 trillion boondoggle, wait, 1, 2, 3, the third one.
Right.
And all of the out of control spending in there. I think I believe, because I take him at his word, that he is all in for all of those policies and would be very supportive of the Senate passing that. So, I thought it was interesting, having worked for Senator McSally. We followed Mark Kelly a lot the last couple of years, and it was interesting to actually see a position on the filibuster yesterday. I mean, there's been years of thought put into this position, and so
he's been studying it since he, started running the first
a lot
time.
of study.
Well, it was interesting for him to take a position on anything, to be honest.
Well,
with you.
and
Because he typically refrains from taking a position until the position has already been decided, and then he'll come out in favor of it once the vote has been taken or something else has happened.
It shows how quickly he's become a part of the swamp. I mean, he tried to claim that he was independent, and the fact that he hasn't hugged Kyrsten Sinema as tightly as possible, which I've probably said that phrase 100 times to people on this podcast. It's just a mystery to me. I mean, she is laying out exactly the way he should be running for re-election, and he's just ignoring it, which, good for those of us who want a Republican senator. So.
Yeah, I think looking at that Senate race and seeing, the candidates all jumped on that. I mean, the minute he staked out the position, put out his statement, Blake Masters, Mick McGuire, they were all out there. And I think, those are the types of things that people in Arizona, certainly in a district like mine, which is a de-leaning moderate district. I mean, I've got to be eyes wide open about what it is. They want a check on power. They want to know that you've got, a bit of a bulwark there in the Senate. And so now to know that's where the junior senator is at, I think that's a ripe issue for our Republican candidates.
Yeah, no question.
Well, and what's interesting about that is that because now he has to start taking positions. Now you're in the end game of the cycle, not the end game of the cycle, but he kind of had it easy when he was running because he was the astronaut. He was married to Gabby Giffords, and there's a lot of sympathy behind that, and rightfully so. But he'd never really taken hard positions on hard issues or taken a vote on anything, and now he had to.
Yeah, and I think in fairness, I'm always look at he was new to politics, so I get
Sure.
it. There's a period where you literally are still developing, you're still wanting to hear from constituents. But that ends the day you are elected and you've taken the oath. Like at that point, it's time to get serious. You're not prepping for the job. The job interview is over. You've got it. And as any of us know who have run our own businesses, have been in business, once you've got the job, you don't have the luxury of time. You've got to be ready to get in there and make decisions, live by them. If you make the wrong one, you pivot. But I think to me, that's what was disappointing. I'll give you you got a grace period. You want to hear from folks, but then at some point, do the job.
Yeah, that's a great point. Speaking of doing the job, tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah. Nice segue.
And how you came to the crazy conclusion that you were going to run for Congress.
Well, so...
Do you realize exactly what you're doing?
I think I do. I think I do. Some days I question it, and I'm like, all joking aside, though, and I'll talk about my background in a minute, but I did know it was crazy, and as you can imagine, had long conversations with my husband, because this is a family decision. Sure. When you do this, it's not just you, it's you, your kids, your parents that might have to hear and read bad things about you, people saying you're an idiot. And so we really talked about it, and my husband, frankly, was the one who pushed me over the edge. You know, we had been looking at what was happening with the Biden Democrat-controlled Congress, and it was just antithetical to what I and we believe America is, which is, you know, you work hard, you know, we're welcoming, where this is the land of opportunity, I would say, is what I feel more than anything. And my background is an example of that. And I think that's why I feel it in my bones. And I saw that slipping away with a whole different way. They were reshaping the relationship between people and government from one that was, you know, one of freedom and one of blaze your own trail to one of government knows best. Government will tell you what to do, when to do it, and don't worry, we'll take care of you, and we're going to send the checks and send the money. Like, that was just a big timeout for me, and we talked about it, and I said, this is going to be hard. My husband said, you know, swing the bat, like swing the bat. And I think we both agree that we need more citizen lawmakers, you know, not career politicians who have been in as long as they can remember and are just constantly looking for what's the next gig, you know, what's the next office. I've been living life, you know, raising kids, working in businesses, being the class mom and the team mom. That's what I've been doing. And I think all of that informs me and what I want to accomplish. But going back to the American dream, my Nana, Chris, you and I have talked about this, immigrated from Mexico when she was a young girl. My great-grandparents were migrant farm workers. They were in Mexico, and they, like so many before them and after, saw opportunity in America. And so they traveled north to the border. They waited there, as I'm told by family. It was about 2 years till they could get their legal papers to come across. They did. And they...
What a novel idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shocking. Rules following. And you know...
They waited. To do things the right way.
And it wasn't hard. Or excuse me, it wasn't easy. It wasn't convenient, but it was the right thing to do. And so they came and they worked across the Midwest as migrant farm workers. And anyone who knows what that life is like or has read about it, certainly I haven't lived it, you know, that is a tough life.
Sure.
Where you are, you know, you're literally setting up camps, tents. I've seen, you know, family pictures, the tents set up out in the field. The women are making food. The women also, by the way, go out and do the work too. Right. It's a tough life, but they did it. My Nana, as a result of that, I believe second grade was the last grade she attended. They settled here in the West Valley, out in Surprise. And my great-grandparents went on to set roots. They had a small grocery shop, bought homes and became, you know, landlords, not tycoons. But for them, that was the American dream, doing better. And then my Nana obviously met my Tata, who is also of Mexican descent, but was born in the U.S. They raised their family here. And so you went from her second grade education. Next generation is my dad, high school speaker, and then I became the first in my family to go and graduate from college and then law school. That's what I'm fighting for, is that idea that it doesn't matter who you are, what your last name is, it doesn't matter how you start. In America, you can become whatever you want. And guys, I've been in some rooms in this process surrounded by people thinking, how did I get here? And I wish my Nana was alive because she would get a kick out of this.
Yeah, I'll bet she would. I'll bet she would. That's a great story. That's fantastic.
That's tremendous. And then, you know, tell us about your business background, and
Sure.
That was really informative in terms of you wanting to make this leap. And,
yeah, absolutely.
And then your time working for Senator McSally.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I went to law school. So I practiced law for about 3 years with Bob Fannin, who you guys might know, and did that. And then one of our clients said, hey, the CEO was leaving. We need a new one. I was young and dumb and full of spirit. And I thought, well, I think I could be a CEO, and threw my name in the hat. And for whatever reason, they picked me. And so at 27, I became the CEO of the Arizona Bankers Association. And that was a tremendous opportunity.
See, that's just amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's
how we
incredible.
got to know each other. but-
That's right. That's when we first met, Sean. And and to any young people out there, I would say to you, when you get that opportunity and it feels too big and it feels a little scary, it's exactly when you jump in.
Yep.
You know, because what's the worst they can say? At that time for me, the worst they could have said is, "No, we found someone better." And I would have been like, "Well, of course you did, you know, older, more experienced." But they didn't. And I will tell you that that was one of those pivotal points. That was the first time I can look back professionally and say I took a really scary jump into the abyss, where I didn't know what was going to happen. And it worked out pretty great and changed the trajectory of my life in many ways. So I did that for 7 years, worked on issues that are still near and dear to my heart, you know, limited government, you know, many of it, people don't often see this, but a lot of pro-consumer work, making sure that we had the capital available for the next small business owner to start their business, for the next first-time homeowner. And so those were great things to work on. From there, I was an executive with the Phoenix Suns, which was a bit of a detour, but a really awesome one. I'm a huge sports fan. Are you guys into sports?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Slightly. Although my sporting season is now over.
You're done because college football
College
is over.
football
Done,
is
so
over.
I know, I do.
With the fake national championship.
Yeah.
But I digress.
Yeah, we're big sports fans, and so that was really cool because I grew up. So I grew up in Peoria. I'm a native, and I grew up watching the Phoenix Suns. Tom Chambers, Mark West, Eddie Johnson, Dan Marley. I mean, those were the core years at the Madhouse on McDowell. So I get the job, and I'm there, and it's like my first week. And this was when Steve Nash was still on the team, Grant Hill. And a friend called me, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, have you seen Steve Nash yet? Have you met him?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I saw him down there." I said, "But Dan Marley just walked by my office." And he said, "Hi, Tanya." Now, of course, he saw the nameplate before he walked out. But I like to pretend we were really
He really knew.
He really knew. But we did become friends. And so to work in something, you know, where I had watched these guys, Eddie Johnson, Tom Chambers, these guys all became colleagues. And we're working in this, you know, sports and doing a lot of the things
So I don't think we've ever had this conversation. So you know Alvin Adams.
I do know Alvin Adams.
So we bought our home from Alvin Adams.
No way.
Yeah. So everything in our home is very, very high. We've got 12-foot ceilings and also like 5-foot countertops. I mean, it's nuts.
Alvin is the best, and
He's the nicest guy.
Oh, he is so great, and architecture background, I think. So he was very much involved with
he's
like
still
facilities.
working there. He built the facility over here on
He
44.
did. I just saw him maybe 6 months ago. I was there checking out the new renovations, and I ran into Alvin in perfect Alvin fashion, looking at a sign. You know, is it this way? Is it that way? And it was fun. But yeah,
he was piddling.
He
that's what all the neighbors said that Alvin would do.
that
He piddles. He just kind of goes around and makes sure everything's okay.
It's a technical term.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was fun, and that was very
That's
much, you know, leadership. And so I did that. I had my own small business for about 5 years, leadership, consulting, executive coaching. That was a great crash course. I'm so glad I did that. Big, you know, bow to all the small business owners and entrepreneurs out there. It is not for the faint of heart. It's a heck of a lot harder than I thought it would be. And especially if you've been in sort of large organizations, there's so much you take for granted. Like,
Absolutely.
Right? Like, oh, there's an IT department, there's HR, like there are janitors, there are all sorts of folks. And then it's just you, and you're looking around like, okay, who's gonna, oh, that's me. I'm gonna do the accounts payable and the marketing and the whatever. So that was great training and something that I'm very passionate about. I would say of all the business work that I did, that's the one that as I go into Congress, as I intend to do, I'll be very focused on. How do we clear the government red tape to folks who are willing to take a chance on themselves and become job creators, job generators? And then out of the blue, got a call from a colleague who I had stayed in touch with and said, hey, Senator McSally, who had just been appointed to her office, she's looking for a state director. Would you be interested? Guys, I didn't know what a state director did. I was like, well, sure. And again, going back to with the bankers, I talked about that being the first leap. You know, there were many in between, but this was another one where I was like, I don't know, tell me about it. It sounded fun. You know, it sounded like a new challenge. I had never worked in government. Frankly, probably didn't think I ever would. And I got a chance to go in, work with her, build our team in Arizona, set up our offices, run our constituent services, which, Sean, you know, I mean, that is the lifeblood.
Yep.
DC, very little gets done. That's the reality. You work hard, very little gets done, but constituent services is where you can make a direct impact every single day. And so put together that team, and it was just fantastic. And ultimately, a few months later, became the deputy chief of staff and would go back to DC and work with our policy team. And you know, so as I look back, this was not the plan to come full circle. You know, how did I decide to jump in? No grand plan, but as I found myself at this fork in the road, kind of looked back and thought, I've been training for this my whole life.
Yeah.
My whole life. And as I look, you know, I talked about small business being very instrumental, but the other thing that I will carry with me and be thinking about every single day is the kid like me who has zero connections, whose family knows no one, who's just, the parents are working paycheck to paycheck, but they've got a dream. And how can we as a government create opportunity for them? You know, not hand it to them and say, here, this is for you and everyone gets it, but to say, look, man, you can go as far as you want to go or not.
Right.
And that's okay too. You know, I think all of those experiences, my grandparents' experience, certainly, all of that will inform.
And it's such an important point because you look at where Washington is now, especially with the Democrats in the House. It's amazing to me that most of the people there got there because they were given opportunities, they took opportunities, they had the ability to excel at something, and now it's almost like they've forgotten, you know, how they got there.
Right.
It's like, oh no, we have to coddle everyone and tell them what they should do, tell them what they can't do, what they can do, you know, the regulations, the restrictions, all those kinds of things. And I just think voters want to be left alone to their own devices. And I think that message is going to resonate very well, particularly in this district, because it is it's not the wealthiest district, and but it's a pretty diverse district.
Mm-hmm, it is.
And there's a lot of entrepreneurship, and there's a lot of opportunity. I mean,
Yeah.
you do have it's really kind of, as I looked at the district, I was like, wow, this is really an interesting opportunity because you just have such a wide diversity of, you've got the university, you've got the high tech part in Chandler, you've got Leisure World, you know, retired folks.
Your mom.
Yeah, and it just, to me, it seems like you are going to have a lot of skill sets that fit perfect with that district, and especially with the constituent services. The part that you talked about with
Absolutely.
McSally, I think that was a piece that I didn't really understand when John Shatta got elected to Congress. I worked in his district office. I'd been a campaign guy, and I didn't know anything about constituent service.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember early on, right after he got elected, we were talking, but he said, I want to be the Dennis DeConcini of the delegation.
Yeah.
I was like, well, he was a Democrat. What are you talking about? And he made the point that Dennis DeConcini, when he was in the Senate, that everybody knew that if they needed to get something done, you know, in the state, you know,
Yeah.
dealing with an agency, whatever, they went to DeConcini's office. They didn't go to Goldwater's office. Now, Goldwater was great, and he, was great on the policy stuff, but he didn't focus on the constituent services the way that DeConcini did. And so it was something that was steeped in my mind. And, you know, even as chief of staff, I was based here in Phoenix because there was so much of an emphasis on the outreach. And I'll never forget, we were at an event, and the husband of a very liberal Arizona Republic reporter at the time, she's long gone, but he came up to John Shadegg said, I'm a total liberal, but I will always vote for you.
Wow.
And it's like, whoa, why? And apparently
He
we
told a
had done
story.
something for a friend of his that had something to do with Iran. It was an Iranian friend, and there was some constituent service aspect that we did, and that solidified. He's like, you did that for him, and I will always support you for that.
Yeah.
And it just really goes to show that policy is important, but being able to be there when people need it.
Yeah.
Because the government is so massive and so intrusive in our lives,
Yep.
you need an advocate.
That's right.
And that's what a lot of congressmen forget, that they've got to be the advocate for their constituents against, or
No matter
no matter the,
the politics.
Exactly.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's the thing about, just to put a fine point in, that is such a key point, Chris, is there was when we did intake, no one ever asked, what's your party affiliation? Do you vote? None of that mattered. You called the office, you got help. And for folks who, we've kind of talked around it, constituent services, as Sean said, we become your voice, your advocate with the federal government. So the types of cases we would get, working with the Social Security Administration, disability cases, huge one for us in Senator McSally's office, and will be important to me as well. My husband's a veteran. My papa was a veteran. Is working for our veterans with the VA as they're trying to get the care and services they need. The IRS, all of those massive bureaucracies, and you might be calling and emailing, you don't get anything. If you're listening and you have an issue, call your congressman, call your senator, because that's what they're there for. And it's a tremendous service, something I'm a true believer in, and will be a cornerstone of my office.
Yeah, that's great. It strikes me as it's still the same. I mean, when Shadow got elected in 1990, when we went into office in 1995, it was the VA, it was Social Security, it was
Right.
IRS.
It's the big behemoths of government that are so difficult to navigate.
That's 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Almost. Oh my God.
Well,
doing
my
it.
first job working in politics was working for Senator Dennis DeConcini.
Yeah.
As
No
an intern.
way.
Yeah. So I'll take some credit for those that
There you
focus
go.
on constituent services.
You were the staff assistant doing the
No,
intake.
he had me stuck in the patent subcommittee of the judiciary, which he was chair of.
That is
But I
saucy
answered
stuff.
a lot of mail and a lot of phone calls and returned a lot of phone calls.
Yeah.
On behalf of that
I
subcommittee.
bet. Now, back then, you probably did you have email yet?
There was no email.
Right.
It was all researched.
Okay.
There was no internet. There was no Google. You went down to the Congressional Research Service.
Yeah.
If you needed an answer for something and you were diligent in what you were doing, they came back with you with an answer. You went back
It would
up.
take a few weeks.
You wrote
too.
it would take a few weeks. You would write the letter and then or call the constituent back
Yeah.
with some sort of answer of what they were dealing with. It
Amazing.
was, and yet you learned so much doing it that way.
Oh, for sure.
Versus,
Yeah.
I'm sure you still learn a lot now, but not.
Yeah,
but that was a little bit different.
It was a grind. It was a grind.
It was
It's
definitely a
different.
grind. But it's good to hear you that you want to keep that at the forefront of.
Absolutely.
Of your office.
That is how we will be able to deliver for the district on day one and every day after. You can't always say that on policy, right? I mean, I'm a policy nerd. There's all sorts of folks that go to DC. I'm sure you guys have heard this. There's a show horse, the workhorse. I'm much more of the workhorse, and that's why I have such respect for Senator Kyle. So in my sort of formative years, he was the senator with Senator McCain, and you had that sense of like nose to the grindstone, let's get stuff done.
Well, in some respects, what Sean just described was the same between Senator McCain and Senator Kyle. I would argue Senator Kyle, I think, focused more on state issues and state needs and constituent needs, and I would argue McCain focused much less on that.
Yeah. McCain was clearly more of he very much followed into Goldwater's footsteps of kind of being the superstar and running for president
Several times.
and not making it.
He also had some awesome constituent services folks. So, and I will say that because they worked for us in Senator McSally's office, and they were a godsend. So,
I'll bet.
And they're still committed to that. So so constituent services, I'll be one of, over 400 folks. And so, I always laugh when people are like, I'm going to do this. Look, in Congress, you're not a king or a queen. You've got to work just to get a voice on the committee. And I will do those things, and I will learn and advocate and fight. But, you always look for, but what are the wins we can deliver to Arizonans and that we can control. So, yeah, good stuff.
That's awesome.
Well, will be interesting to see, and you and I have had this discussion, but given the makeup of the district and where it is, and it's south of Central Phoenix, and
Yes, it is.
and
Well, and east.
and
And
east,
east.
and east, and
Significantly east.
and so what do you think your possible opponent right now, or the incumbent, does in something like that? It's so foreign for him to have to go down south and east of Phoenix.
Well, I mean, I won't pretend to know what his plans are, but certainly, the hubbub, the talk is that, with him being redistricted in with Schweikert, that this is the logical place, and it's, a D+2. So my assumption is that this is where he'll run. Doesn't live in the district, doesn't really live close to the district. We've got a huge portion of the district that is new, that he has never represented. So who knows what he'll do, but I'll tell you that creates a huge opportunity for me, candidly, because they're voters of first impression. We've actually, when the lines were drawn, we wanted to go out, my team, and take a look at the district. And so we did some polling, and we found out that, frankly, he's got pretty soft name ID, pretty soft approval for someone who is an incumbent. Now, that's just a data point, but for me, that was pretty darn encouraging. And so I don't know. I assume, he will do what's best for him and his family, but we're ready. I'm ready for the fight, regardless of who the general election opponent is. And I think whoever it is, we're going to have a good debate on the issues. Because this is where, to me, I keep talking about this fork. I talk about, where I think Biden and the Congress were going. There are going to be clear policy decisions, right? Like you either want someone who is going to be a vote for Joe Biden and the policies he's pushing, or someone that will stand against it. And I think right now that's a pretty stark difference. And so whoever the opponent is, we'll have good policy debate. And I like where we are as a party. I think we've got a good story to tell. And right now I think there's just, it's been a mess coming out of Washington. That's putting it mildly.
Yeah.
Well, I think you saw that yesterday with Joe Biden's press conference, where he wouldn't take responsibility for much of anything.
Yeah, I didn't
including
catch it.
Probably his greatest defeat, and that is the one in Afghanistan, which is now
brutal.
leading to most likely a defeat in Ukraine, and then with the Chinese knocking on the door of Taiwan, probably after the Olympics.
Yeah, it's going to be,
It's a big mess.
This is a mess. I want to give credit where credit is due. I was surprised and impressed that he said no more lockdowns, no more school closures,
But we're shipping
will
400 million masks to your local
I'm not
pharmacy.
saying that it's perfect because I think that's absurd, but the fact that he has said no more school closures, that sends a pretty
And we're so
pretty
happy
stark-
you're not wearing a mask.
Speak freely amongst ourselves.
because we wouldn't be able to see your face. And there's something about that.
A real down. I know. Smiles. You think about kids.
How
who-
can you teach kids? You can't see their face.
No, it's just and so much. I mean, we're sitting here like there's so much that we communicate that's nonverbal.
Sure.
And when you lose that, and that's both good and bad. I mean, it's so anyway. I'm glad to be here, maskless,
Maskless.
talking with you.
So I'll give credit where credit is due.
Okay.
He's basically thrown the gauntlet down to the teachers union.
Okay,
and
so that's
says,
one
"This is
out of
great."
4.
Well, it's 1 out of maybe 100.
Well, on that
but-
particular issue.
Right. So I was. That's the only thing I tweeted about the press conference, was that I was happy to see that and surprised. But him saying that, I think I've exceeded expectations, in my mind was an absurd statement.
Yeah,
And it just was disappointing.
Well, if he's at 33%, generally, I mean, the
Well,
deep dive into
that-
that is
that's an outlier poll, Chris. He's really at like
That was a-
40.
so much better. But I think that's so. I didn't catch it. I was actually in meetings, but I of course saw the the commentary after. And something you alluded to, Sean, is there's this idea like he's acting like he has a messaging problem, right? Like I just need to get out there to the American folks because I need to communicate better in messaging. And I'm like, no, man. It's a policy problem.
Yep.
He didn't have any problem comparing his opponents to Bull Connor last week.
No.
Yeah.
None.
Great.
And I think everyone got that message loud and clear.
Exactly. I think the message is being received, and I think they are.
So much so that we had to look up who Bull Connor was. 'Cause that was
He had
way.
to look
I had to.
I knew who it
Oh,
was.
okay. Well, at least we agree on something.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah, so we'll see. But look, as long as they keep thinking they have a messaging problem, that is great for me
Yeah.
and all Republicans, because that means they are not going to change course. Bad for the country, and that hurts. But yeah, I mean this thing where it's not the message; it's policy.
That's a great point, and I think that's something that it will be very interesting to see how the Democrats react to. I have no question that they're going to lose the House, and that you're going to be a part of that. And there's a good chance that they lose the Senate. I think Mark Kelly just made it very, very difficult for himself to get reelected because of his kowtowing to
Along with some
Schumer.
other senators, too, who
Yeah.
voted in the affirmative.
True. And so it'll be interesting to see where they go after they lose the House and the Senate, because Biden's agenda will be done. I mean, it's not really. It's been such a surprise. It was the surprise for me was how much he kowtowed to the left when he got elected. He got elected, said he's going to be a unifier. There was a real strong path for him to work a bipartisan angle on infrastructure and other things. He needed to because it was a 50-50 Senate, and they acted like they had a 60-40 Senate.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just and a 20 or 30 seat majority in the House. So it's been interesting to see how badly they miscalculated the tightness of what they could get done because of the tightness of both the margins in both houses. So.
Well, but I think when you're dealing with ideologues, which is what you're dealing with the radical left, the Sandy Cortezes of the world in the House, who presumably will be one of your colleagues. I don't think she's not going to get reelected. But then somebody like a Bernie Sanders who basically he handed over the budgetary process to in the Senate.
Yeah.
And so when you do that, they go for broke. They're not really caring about the repercussions down the line.
Well, they don't. What's evident is that Nancy
If they can get
Pelosi
it
was-
through now. They
Right.
can bully you into voting their way now, and they lose the election. They don't care about that.
Pelosi clearly made it.
She made her entire caucus walk the plank.
Yeah, they walked the plank, and she knew it was going to cost the majority, but she didn't care. And I guess it's in part because she's not going to be there.
How convenient.
Yes.
Yeah, you think
With her $30 million stock.
She made her money. She's out.
Wasn't that revealed the other day? Her husband made like $30 million in the last
Yeah.
couple of years.
I think that.
there's ice cream to be eaten.
Yeah,
Chris.
Goodness
that's
gracious.
From the double freezer.
The $20,000 double freezer. Yeah. Okay.
She's just one of us. Come on.
Yeah.
Doesn't everybody have a $20,000 double freezer?
I love that.
I know where to find Nancy Pelosi every Friday in Washington, D.C.
Do you?
Yes, she can be found at the Four Seasons getting her hair done.
Well, hair's
Yeah, that's-
important.
yeah.
Hair's important, gentlemen.
I get it.
I'm here to tell you.
Especially at the Four Seasons.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking of all the places I would go. I'm not sure I'd go there to get my hair done, but
That's where she goes.
Well, Harry Reid used to, he lived at the Ritz.
That's
when
right.
He was in D.C.
Yeah.
and isn't that the funny thing? I mean, that's the thing that I think just slays people is that kind of like hypocrisy, where they hit you over the head like I'm a person of the people, I'm for the people, I'm for the people, and then living at the Four Seasons or the Ritz, and look, I got no problem with those places. I've also stayed at a good Best Western in my day, but the point is that you try to be something that you're not. And that to me is, and we saw that with all of the, a lot of the COVID stuff, the hypocrisy. And I think that's what just really gets people is, you're telling me that these are the rules for me, right? Rules for me, not for thee. And we saw it with Newsom, and we saw it with Pelosi getting her hair done. And we're still seeing it. Gillibrand was somewhere recently, apologizing for not having
And she
him.
says, we can do better.
We can do better. And people are done with it. I mean, that's certainly the sense is I'm out talking with everyday folks who are, you talk to them about these issues. they're just done with that hypocrisy. You be you. And
Yeah.
and we both know people who will own, this is who I am. And there are members of Congress who are certainly millionaires and don't make any bones about, fly their private plane around when they're campaigning. Be you.
Right.
And I think that's what people are craving so much right now is I just want to know who you are. And every time they feel like you say one thing and do another, you lose that trust. And once you lose the trust, you've lost the voter, you've lost the constituent. And so yeah, I don't.
Speaking
That
of
is
it,
that is
for
very refreshing to
Well,
hear.
and for whatever reason, it makes me think of when Greg Stanton was
Where is Greg
in a
Stanton?
committee. Well, he's probably on a boat because
That's
if you
right.
recall, he had a committee hearing that he wasn't going to be at
That's-
because COVID, and he was
He was on a boat.
voting in the committee by phone or video while he was on
Which
his
is
boat.
something that I can't wait for if Kevin McCarthy is the leader or whomever might be the leader for them to rescind this idea that you can vote by proxy
Yeah.
or send a proxy to Congress
No.
to vote on your behalf is outrageous.
They've completely overstepped on this stuff and created. I mean, look, I'm guessing
You
we're going
can
to
just
see
run an
him voting
ad
by a vote.
with him on the boat.
Yeah, exactly. Where is
Over and
Greg
over and over
He's on
again.
a boat.
Where is your congressman? He's on a boat versus being at
And you
his
know
job.
what? That boat
I'm just saying that's a
that
great
boat wasn't
idea.
in the district.
Nope.
He was supposed to be at home
He was
because of
supposed to be at
COVID.
home because of COVID.
Well,
So
He was bare-chested on a boat
to your
somewhere out in
point,
the Bahamas.
I think this.
It's the Bahamas. I'm guessing it was San Diego or Newport.
Yeah, but that sounds better.
Oh, okay.
But again, having these rules, like, no, do the job, right? That's what you're hired to do a job, do the job. And so if we're asking our frontline workers to be out there working, if we're asking teachers and police and fire and, grocery store clerks to be out there, you're going to tell me that Congress can't do their job? Like, no, either you want it or you don't.
Yep.
So show up. Cast your vote. If not, that's fine, but let the record reflect that. And then that's something that the voters can evaluate and decide if they want to rehire you for the job, they want to keep you or not. And that's really what elections are about. We talk about it in different language, but it's really, who do I want to fill this position? Everyone's their own, small business owner. Do I want him or her? Do I want to fire you? Do I want to hire you? And, going back to this district, even though, there's a potential that I will be running against an incumbent, it's not the incumbent in this seat.
Right.
This is,
Sure.
In many ways, this is an open seat to the extent that we're asking people, a fresh group of people, to look and say, who do we want? And a lot of folks, including your mom out in Leisure World, they're looking at this new world thinking, we are represented by Andy Biggs. So now for them, instead of thinking like the folks in Tempe, are we keeping Greg Stanton? They're thinking, oh wait, we're losing an Andy Biggs. Well, we can't gain a Democrat in place. And so it's fascinating and it's fun. But I try not to make too much out of that. I think that's where candidates can kind of lose their way when they get too much into the data and the minutia. And don't know my campaign folks, I'm saying this, but you just live it by feel. I mean, at the end of the day, I am a person. I am not a perfect person. I'm a person that cares, and I'm a person who's committed to this. Everyone who lives in the district, they're just people too. And I think showing up, talking with them, most importantly, listening. How many politicians do we know that talk so much more than they listen? I say that. I've talked your guys' ears off on this podcast, but that's why you had me on.
No, this is great. And politics is all about relationships.
Absolutely.
And it's all about getting in front of people
Yeah.
and listening and hearing about their concerns, about their dreams,
Yeah.
about their desires, about what they want for their kids and for their futures.
Absolutely.
And if you're dismissive of that, like so many politicians are, you deserve to be voted out,
You do. And it's, look, every room,
regardless of your politics.
complete, and that's what I like. Like,
You know, hypocrisy goes both ways.
that is a bipartisan issue,
Yeah.
to be clear.
Yeah, exactly.
But you have to, listening, showing up, and not making judgments about folks, which again, we all do, we're all human. But what I have found going into a variety of different rooms where I don't always know where voters' heads are, there is always so much more that we have in common. particularly within Republican rooms where there's a spectrum. Certainly the left has it right now. We talked about that with the far. There's always a spectrum, but when I walk in, we have so much more in common that we have that's different. And so my approach has always been in business. I've been very effective. And the reason I've been effective is because I walk into each room, each conference table saying, okay, we may be diametrically opposed on this issue, but what can we agree on?
Yeah.
We can agree that people should have access to home loans, right? Okay, we can agree on that. And then, how far out can we build that circle? When you do that, I find over time, you are able to get things done. You're able to move the ball forward. Sometimes it's 5 or 10 yards. It's rarely the Hail Mary. But you will find what you're looking for. And if you are looking for reasons to be opposed to someone, if you are looking for reasons not to get a deal done, if you're looking for reasons to say no, you're going to find them.
Yep.
You absolutely will. And that's just not how I'm wired. Not how I'm wired.
Well, I think
that makes you like a true salesperson in many ways, because no doesn't mean no. No means how do we make this work?
Right. Yeah, because I expect yes. I walk in expecting that I am going to make friends with everyone in the room, and that we are going to find something to agree on, and we're going to find a way to move the ball forward.
Agree on something. Now, there's a novel concept.
And also everyone doesn't have to be your enemy. I mean, this is something that just, if we would, I think about, whenever something feels big, like a big amorphous problem, one of the ways that I can get my head around it is to try and bring it back to, well, what if this was in my household? What if this was my kids? What would I do? And if my son, the 2 older kids are now older and moved out, so Jake is the last one at home. If he did some of the things that I see some of our politicians doing or saying, he would be grounded. he would lose his car key. Things would happen. And so I think we have to be clear-eyed about that. We don't have to be mean. We don't have to be nasty. We can disagree and be friends.
Right.
Shockingly, we need more of that. We need more of it.
Well, and of all people, Joe Biden famously said they are not our enemies; they're our opponents. And yet what he has done with his rhetoric over the last year is completely the opposite.
Absolutely.
And I like what you said. I mean, if we look at even our opponents as children of God, as men and women of faith, then you look at them totally different.
Absolutely. Brothers, sisters, neighbors, classmates. Just think about, and I would challenge anyone listening to this, because you're probably, if you're listening, you're a real political junkie. You probably go to political meetings. And I would just challenge you, the next time you walk into a room, before you go in, think to myself, I'm walking into a room of brothers and sisters. I'm walking into a room of neighbors. And notice how that just having that thought, that shift, changes the energy that you take in, changes the way you're going to relate to folks. I'm not all sunshine. Look, stuff still goes bad. You may still disagree, but my gosh, the chances of things going right goes up exponentially.
Well, it's a prayerful energy, right?
It is.
And it's also how things actually can get done.
Yeah.
Carl Hayden and Barry Goldwater were not philosophically aligned at all, but they did a lot of great stuff for the state of Arizona because they put their differences aside to do that. And we've had examples of that in the delegation before. Ed Pastor, nobody agreed with him politically for the most part. He was, for a while, not very many Democrats other than Ed Pastor, but he was a leader because he was willing to work across the aisle to get stuff done. And I think that
Pastor was one of the best.
Yeah, I think that that's an important component. It's unfortunately so toxic in D.C. And my hope is that when Republicans take the House back, that there is some return to comedy. I mean, I know there's going to be some who want to impeach Biden and they want to strip committees of different members because they want retaliation what the Democrats have done. But I think what makes the most sense is to say, we're going to work on passing an agenda. We're going to work on policies. Yeah. We're going to find places where we can agree with the president, but there's going to be a lot of places we disagree, and we're going to try to stop him from doing the bad stuff.
And that's okay. That's good.
The way
that's right. Fine. Yeah, I think one of the ways I think about it, with the new be the change you want to see in the world. You know, I often think about that for myself. Be the change. If I don't like the way something's going, I have no control over what other people do, but I can control what I do and how I react. And so when I take my oath and I become a member, I can't change what people are doing around me, but I can try and I will be myself, and I can hopefully be a light to others that says, oh, she seems really happy and well-adjusted. Maybe we don't have to be miserable all the time. Maybe we can be effective.
She seems incredibly normal.
How did she make it here?
She's not a sociopath.
That's
at
right.
all.
Have me back in a decade, guys, and I'll be talking about ice cream.
Right. Once you've drank from the swamp stew.
No, not going to happen.
I don't think you'll do that. Tanya, thank you so much for being here.
We could probably talk for another
we
hour.
could.
I know, this is awesome.
But we're limited by time
And
because
we
of
will-
our producer here. She'll start like banging a bell. And
She's a real taskmaster
Yes,
over there.
She is. And we will have you back for sure. But tell people where they can find you, where they can donate, where they can
Sure.
sign your petition,
Yep.
all that kind of stuff.
TanyaForArizona.com. TANYA for Arizona.com. You can sign the petition there. You can give. You can also send an email and say, hey, I'd like to volunteer, or hey, here's an issue that's important to me. That's the best way. And then on social media, also at Tanya for Arizona. So Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all the socials.
Great.
I'm there.
Fantastic.
That is awesome. Well, good luck in your endeavor.
Thank you,
We,
guys.
we'll
Thank
be
you for
watching
being
closely.
here.
I appreciate it.
And just as a reminder to our listeners that this podcast was founded on the principles of faith, freedom, and free enterprise. And you can find us on all the socials as well.
Yep. Light beer, dark money.
Thanks
Thanks, everybody.
for listening.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
God bless.